Hello and welcome to the Promised Land live show reaction to Manchester City 3, Manchester United 1. We're talking all about Manchester United and their performance. This is the Promised Land, part of the 90 Min Podcast Network. I'm Scott, joined by Rob Blanchette, as ever, as per usual. And a weird one today, Rob. I'm seeing a wide variety of emotions. Steve Taylor says, did okay, could have been much worse. That's kind of how I feel about it. But I'm seeing some thinking United were robbed, others saying, what the hell was that? I can't believe we're accepting this. Yeah, United finished the game with Willie Camboila, Amari Forson on the pitch. Like, honestly, what do you guys expect? Rob, how are you doing?
Not bad. And I felt relatively good. I'll say the first half, like an amazing goal by Marcus, which we will talk about. He couldn't have nailed that any better than he did. And I think, Scott, in these kind of games, everyone knows, I think on Twitter, we get called tacticos now. I think that's become a derogatory term.
I'm going to say this. I am not a tactico, and I never.
You're not the tactico, and I'm the tactico. So please direct all your tactical abuse at Rob Blanchette. Just go straight to me in my Twitter account. So Scott's not a tactico, but I think when you look at the game, and this is just how I always think, is that you got to do what you got to do to make sure you don't lose games and potentially you can win them. I've seen already a few comments there saying, when you defend your own half like that, then what chance have you got of winning? Well, at one point you were 1-0 up. And most teams don't beat Man City. Most teams get absolutely slaughtered by the way Man City played a counter press, just what it is. So I think today your only real option was to sit in and to see what you could do on the counter attack. And it worked obviously very early on. And I think, Scott, especially in that first half, that was on all day long. I think if United could have done that better, clipped that ball in from the midfield or from the defence over the top. City were giving it away. City were like, yeah, you clip it over the top. It'll be Ederson versus one of you in a straight race. So I kind of think, Scott, I've been dying to see Eric Ten Hag kind of do something like this for a long time because he plays 4-1-4-1 against absolutely everyone. Any team he plays every week, it's 4-1-4-1. And half the time we come away from those games going, well, United are tactically short today. So I actually think they got the tactics right today. I really do. I just think the execution just wasn't there. And let's be honest, that's the story of this Man United squad is they just don't quite have that sharpness when it comes to execution.
Yeah, also, I think they were ground down. Obviously, Man City will do that to you. They're the way that they keep possession, especially pin you in on the edge of your own box. They do it to a lot of teams. I compared the way that Chelsea played at the Etihad a few weeks ago to Ollie Ball. Obviously, I think they made a bit more of it in attack, but it's the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And obviously, they did get a draw. But Kerwin says, and I think this is a great sum up of how I feel. Our players aren't good enough. We can't protect, turn, or pass on the ball.
Yeah.
Nick says, hard to win when you defend your final third the entire game. Completely agree. Peter says, the right game plan with those players, but Man City's quality took the win in the end. The only thing I'm disappointed with is that after the 2-1 goal, there was nothing. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, that's nice to see, actually. There's no... if you're coming here for viral hot takes, wrong place. But, I do have some feelings we'll dig into. We'll talk about Marcus Rashford's performance. Obviously, scored an amazing goal out of nothing, really, and then didn't do much else. But he is a talking point anyway. There's a few players we'll point out and talk about. We'll talk about Eric Ten Hag's tactics as well. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube already, as we record this live show, please do. If you're coming back to this later on, subscribe on YouTube, The Promised Land, a Man United podcast. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Like the video, like the podcasts, subscribe everywhere. We put this, leave a comment for us, 5-star reviews, etc., etc. Hit the notification bell on so you never miss a show as well. And follow us on social media. The links or the ats are in the description of this video at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, TikTok, @_Rob_B on X and YouTube, and at TPLMUFC on X as well. Right.
The 1 million streamed Promised Land.
Yes.
So that's something, well, we should say that at the top of every show now. We've had 1 million streams for the podcast. So Thank you very much for all your support.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Yeah, drop your comments in. We'll dig into them throughout the show. Joe D says £1 billion red bottle jobs. I mean, they didn't. Yeah, you can't really
£2
use the
billion
bottling
red
thing.
bottle jobs.
Okay. Yeah, but everybody will sit there and agree that they spent the $2 billion absolutely terribly. So
yeah,
you can't have it both ways.
I don't think they bottled it today. I just think
they didn't bottle it. Like this was not a team of Liverpool's kids.
Yeah, they bottled it against Fulham.
This was the best team in the world. So
by a long way. I think that's the thing, Scott. Here is that you can resist the kind of irresistible, but ultimately, when you play Man City on their patch and they're chasing a double treble, you could get hurt in certain moments of the game.
Joe says he's just messing. So there we go. Michael says, when they say you realize what you've got when they're not there, Højlund proves that every game. He misses no physical presence without him. Right. And that is a nice segue into the first goal. Right. And I think I want to talk about Marcus Rashford's performance to start with, really, because you could see in the first few minutes when United hadn't, emptied their tanks because they've been running around chasing the ball for 85, 90 minutes. Yeah. How many drinks has everyone had? I've not had any. Rob, have you had any?
No, I've got a coffee there. That's me.
Coffee? Decaf, isn't it?
Decaf. It's decaf. Come on, it's decaf. But we're recording a podcast, so I've got to have some form of coffee here.
Yeah. Right. Marcus Rashford, right? I think that might have been the best goal he's ever scored. I think that the Chelsea free kick was maybe the most satisfying in terms of how it looked.
But the PSG one as well. Remember that? He scored against PSG, didn't he?
Yeah, true. But I think
Chelsea one was good.
The Chelsea one was good, but it was a free kick.
There, isn't it? Top 5.
This was an open play, obviously. So I think for me in a Manchester derby, obviously it didn't mean anything in the end. But Marcus Rashford, after 5 minutes, had everyone thinking, that's what this means to me. And have that. Great goal.
Great goal. And it came from Bruno Fernandes finally kind of playing a false role up top. I have lost count of the amount of shows that I've done where I've begged to see Bruno Fernandes play a false role at the top end of the pitch because A, it keeps Bruno up the right end of the pitch and away from your defence, and B, I think he has those kind of false nine properties where he can help and join the dots and bring someone in. So I think Bruno did well with that run there. Obviously gets the ball, shields it, lays it off to Marcus. And do you know what Marcus Rashford's really good at, Scott? He's good at striking a football. That's really one of the things he's quite good at. He's not very good at other stuff sometimes, but he's good at that one thing. So technically a beautiful strike, he clips the underside of the crossbar, kind of what you'd call in basketball being put on a poster, be on a poster on someone's bedroom wall there because it's such a beautiful moment. But I think the truth is with Marcus, just being honest, and this is not to get at Marcus or to attack Marcus or upset Marcus or any of that. I think he did his job out of the press. I think he did well, like sitting in on that left-hand side. He looked after Foden. But the truth is, his moment of, I'm going to call it a poor decision because I can't swear, but his poor moment to decide that he gets a little touch from Kyle Walker to fall over absolutely killed United in that moment of transition. The ball ends up at Phil Foden. Phil Foden looks up and goes, I'm not marked anymore. It's the first time today. I'm going to go in on my left and I put it in the top corner. And that all comes from very small detail, making a choice. And I think overall in the game, Scott, I don't think Marcus played very well. Wasn't surprised when he got pulled because I think when you looked at it, we 20 minutes, 15 minutes to go. Marcus's control on the deck wasn't very good, was it? It wasn't helping United push forward. But a great goal. But that's all. That's it. Like a great goal. And he could have gone off after 8 minutes. And that would have been his performance. And unfortunately, he really hurt United for that first goal. He really did because he didn't need to fall over. I think he was play acting. I really do. I know Eric claimed and the captain came over and claimed and they're trying to support Marcus in that moment. But I think if you give Man City an inch, Scott, they will take a yard. They absolutely will. And that's what happened in that moment. So Marcus didn't really help his football team overall when it came down to it.
He scored a great goal, right? And obviously there's a lot of bluster around him after the piece that he did last week
Mm.
or earlier this week ahead of that game. And after a few minutes, you think that's how you respond. If you're going to make statements, you back it up on the pitch. I think that's all everyone will ever really say.
Definitely.
Back it up on the pitch, like prove it on the pitch. And in that moment, it was an amazing strike. He really did.
Yeah.
Then you see, I don't know whether it was either side of that goal or after that goal. He was played in behind the City defense, miscontrolled it.
Yes.
When Kyle Walker was on his back. I think it was Kyle Walker.
Yeah.
There was also a cross in, which Scott McTominay left. He could have headed it, and maybe it wasn't the right angle for a header. And he kind of came through to Rashford, and he miskicked it, miscontrolled it.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the rest of the game, and I'm not having a go at him for that. I mean, these things happen, but like ultimately, the world's very best strikers probably make more of those situations. And then through the rest of the game, like Sir Mickley says it here, right? Ten Hag did get his tactics right. Unfortunately, these players just couldn't execute. They're also scared to hold on to the ball or take on any City players.
Yeah.
For me, I think Marcus Rashford is petrified of Kyle Walker. I think he's petrified of playing against him because Marcus Rashford relies on his pace and Kyle Walker has that. He can match pretty much anyone in world football for pace. He's strong as hell. Very, very hard to beat. You have to kind of do what Sterling did to him the other week. You have to be clever. And obviously Sterling scored for Chelsea at the Etihad as well and kind of tiled Kyle Walker up in knots. If Marcus Rashford is faced in a one-on-one with Kyle Walker and he hasn't got that ability to run past him like he does have that advantage over other players, I think he's kind of out of ideas, really. So there was moments in the game today where I think, because he played on the left side for most of the time, received it, I was just a bit too soft on it. Alan Shearer on BBC commentary in the FA Cup game in midweek kind of really went off on one in that game when Rashford lost the ball. I can't remember which defender he was up against, but it was more of that today. He was too soft, and maybe that's not his game. But ultimately, if you want to hit other levels, and if you want to help, and crucially if you want to help United get up the pitch, you need to be good at that because you need to have an outball. You need to have somebody who can get there, control it, hold the ball up, or maybe take it past a player and play a smart pass to get them up the pitch. The reason why United was so stuck, obviously they defended deep, but the reason why they were so stuck on the edge of their own box is because they didn't really have an option to play it out because every time it did go out, they lost it. And that is, unfortunately, the fault of the front players.
Completely. And I think the thing is with Marcus on the day, like I actually think, Scott, again, for the vast majority of his work was fine because this was about looking after a position on the football pitch, United playing that system and being able to sit in a little bit. I don't think there's any sin in playing a low block at Manchester City. Like it's fine. Like these tactics are not old or new or whatever. They've been here forever. It's just that most teams don't do them as often against Man City. And guess what? That's why Man City thrash everyone. That's the truth. So I think with overall, I think Marcus did his job, but it's the other bits like you just mentioned there. And that's when you've got that opportunity to run, either flick the ball on and go in a straight line or keep possession or keep the ball or do something smart. Guess what? That's when Man United falter, isn't it? In those moments where you would expect another team to do something different. I think you saw it with Man City is that they were getting frustrated in the game, especially at 1-0 down. And I think if you'd managed to eke that out a little bit longer, you would have had at some point a proper counter-attack on them. Because City were just like, oh, well, we're going to push up anyway. It's what we do. I think the thing is with Marcus, Scott, is that in this system, it doesn't really suit him to play a 4-3-3 in this style. But that's why the question has to lend itself in the future, talking about the summer, about whether you keep or sell this player. This is exactly why we have the conversation. I know Marcus talked a lot about a lot of things in his interview the other day, but I'm only really interested in football. That's it, And, if you do something and you get caught in Belfast, then, I think you should answer to the manager for those things and to the club. But overall, this is a football thing. We're talking about football. So I think the work rate was all right today, Scott. Technically, he was very poor and he scored a great goal. And that's his game in a nutshell. And that's why he gets pulled for Anthony and not Garnacho. So it's kind of as simple as that, really. So I think the things for Marcus is that if Eric Ten Hag is a manager next season, if Eric Ten Hag wants to develop having different systems, I get the feeling this is why we don't see 4-3-3 so often, because he feels he has to play Rashford, so he just plays 4-1-4-1 and sticks with it. But I think today you saw, didn't you, that Bruno And Scotty did that job quite well through the middle. So there is some kind of scope there to do different things. And I think one of Ten Hag's big problems this season has been he hasn't done enough of that. He hasn't changed things in moments when he could have done. So I was really pleased to see the system today. And I was really pleased with at half-time with the performance. I thought, yeah, okay, you're sitting in a little bit. But there's no problem playing a low block against Man City. If you play out, Scott, and lose the ball and then you're 3-0 down at half-time, what's the bother? Why turn up? No point, is there? You've sometimes got to counterpunch these teams that are just so heavenly on the actual football.
Yeah. Jeff says, I'm not sure what to make of today. I know we're not at City's level, but can't we at least dominate 10% of a game against them with international players? I don't know.
No, you can't. I said on our last show we would get 20% possession today. I don't know what it was in the end, but
let me look it up.
Have a look. Scott can have a look at the thing. But I said on our last show, City would probably have 80% of the ball. And with our 20%, you're going to have to be really tight and you're going to have to hit on the counter attack. And that's it. And if you do
74
that well,
to 26, according to.
There we go. So I wasn't too far away, was I? So, and that is, I think, reflective of how bad Man United are technically, how good City are technically, and where you stand in terms of confidence. So, do you know what? In years gone by, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer used to beat Pep Guardiola with those kind of possession stats, 25%. And Ole got results. Now, I'm not saying Ole is better than Ten Hag. And I actually think that Ten Hag today worked it out in a way that I'm impressed with. I'm happy that he did what he did. But you know what, Scott? I want to see more of it. I want to see when you play possession teams, you can sit in because you've got blistering pace and you've got this guy, Bruno Fernandes, who could be the perfect false nine in those positions. So please do a little bit more of it, because the problem is he never does it, ever. I wanted to see it in pre-season when we were out on a tour with the boys, and he didn't do it once. And I was like, oh, I wish he would just do it once or twice. Today, I think it showed that against a team as good as Man City, you can nullify a lot of their stuff, because that ball over the top, that little clip, that's on. But you've got to be positioned to do it. Do you know what I mean?
You've also got to take your opportunities when they come as well. And don't think United really... They didn't sustain enough. And
no,
look, this is not an excuse, but they're missing some important players. They're relying on youth players. Like, at least that bench today was awful. Everyone will sit there and question the transfer policy. Yeah, fair enough. That's a criticism, but that's a wider criticism of the football club. That's not been aligned in 11 years. That's not been aligned. So when you see the results like this and performances like this, no point losing your mind about it, because what are you actually learning? What's different? What's new? Like,
no.
The only thing I learned today, Rob, was that, hey, actually, United can defend compact. And I think Bruno's just said that in his interview as well. He's been speaking to Sky Sports. He said, yeah, I think we defended quite well. And I think they did for a large part of the game. I think towards the end, I think they lost their energy a bit. City got their tails up. Obviously, when it went 2-1, I think they felt a bit beaten. The third goal was awful. Amrabat, Casemiro. Christopher Walking says, what were your thoughts on the subs Ten Hag made? We'll talk about that maybe later in the show, I think. But Rob, what did anything you want to say on anything you learned today? Did you learn anything? What was your take on it?
I'll be honest, most weeks at Manchester United, and I've been a fan for a very long time, and I've been covering this football team for a very long time, is that I don't really learn much. I really don't. What I'm looking for is like tweaks. I'm analysing stuff and I'm looking for little tweaks. And today we saw some very significant tweaks of what they were doing. One of the comments up there, I don't know if you can flash it up, Scott, but it says that more tactical flex is needed from Eric Ten Hag if he is to save his job. Building on a solid defence has got to be the place to start with this squad. Now, today, this was Manchester United's 21st different back four in the last 27. Now, the manager can't do anything about that. That's because of injuries, yeah? And you see, brings Maguire back in, Maguire goes out again. So I agree with that comment, because I think this season, if you'd had your stable back four, so you'd have had Varane maybe with Martinez, or you'd have had Martinez with, say, Harry Maguire, that would have helped Andre Onana so much. And then rather than this kind of 21 changes in 27, you might have had 3 changes in 27. Now, that probably would be the difference, Scott, between having a goal difference of 0 and having a goal difference of maybe +10, maybe. Do you know what I mean? So I agree with that comment there. And see, there's another one up there about XG.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you want to bring that one?
I just wanted to read it out.
Go on.
Yeah, Cotton23 says 0.27 XG, one shot on target, and you guys are defending the performance. I'm not defending the performance. I'm saying, and what Rob is saying, I don't want to speak for you. I'm saying, if United had come out and played like they did against Fulham, they just shipped 8 goals.
Totally.
The only way that most teams can get anything against Manchester City is by playing like that, and maybe being a bit more adventurous, but they have to make sure that they're compact and they don't give away easy chances. That's all I'm saying. I'm not defending the performance and saying, you know, that's the football we aspire to play. Although I will say I would like whoever the United manager is to be able to put in a performance like that and set a plan like that, because Alex Ferguson used to do it and people maybe forget that, or they weren't old enough to see that.
Yeah.
And totally. I don't want to like, you know, come at you, but like this, the elitism, right, of tactics and modern football. Pep Guardiola has taken football to levels so high that everybody seems to think that that is the standard. Like, but Roberto De Zerbi this season, who plays amazing football, has been linked with the Man United job, just got smashed 3-0 by Fulham yesterday because he has an identity and a style. Yeah, I know United lost to Fulham last week, but if they'd have lost like that yesterday, you know, it's not, for me, it's not defending the performance. I'm just saying, what did you expect, really?
Yeah.
What did you expect?
Exactly. And there's lots of people here putting things in about XG and stuff like that. One of the comments there saying Chelsea played better last week, and they did. I think Chelsea
are also awful.
Like, Chelsea are also awful.
Chelsea came to Old Trafford and got absolutely smashed.
Absolutely. And I think when you look at the game today, had you had Højlund at the very top end, like Højlund is the quickest player at Manchester United. He's the quickest player in a straight line. You would have exploited that. Definitely. That ball would have been on all day long, over the top, one-on-one with their defenders against John Stone, against Nathan Ake. And I think Nathan Ake really struggled at times earlier on in the football match. So the thing is, it's not about defending the result or the performance. It's about doing what's right. Yeah. And we said it again in our last show. You talked about Inter Milan and Jose Mourinho. And I've always said there are times to park the bus and there are times not to park the bus. And do you know what, Scott? When Fulham turn up, yeah, you shouldn't really be thinking about parking the bus or playing defensively. You should be thinking about playing your best version of your attacking style of football. But guess what? You lost that game of football because you're wild. So the thing is with Man United is this is the continual problem, not just during the Eric Ten Hag period, but probably for the last 10 years, is that on your best day, you can beat anyone. But also the problem is that you're so indisciplined overall as a squad, is that you lose a lot of games that you shouldn't lose. So I thought today with Man United at 1-0, if you could have eked that out a little bit longer and not made that mistake where you let Foden free, you might get something a little bit more. Like, had we been sat here now, Scott, and saying the result was 1-1, would we have people in our comments here now saying, oh, you can't defend that performance? Because 1-1 would have been really good. You would have taken 1-1 before the game. I actually think United will come away and think, well, you know, we did do the work today. We just were short. And that's something that you can level at the squad, I think, absolutely every single week, is that they're just not technically a good enough football team. And that's something that Ineos have to look at today. Ineos will be looking at this result and they'll be going, you're here, but really we want you to be up here a little bit more. And that's why we need to purchase players to be able to be more competent on the football, because you're not. So there's no point trying to do that with Man City. Like, let's outpass Man City. No, don't do that. You will lose the game of football, and that's as simple as that.
Well, Rob,
that was
evidence. That was evidence, Rob, in the third goal.
Yeah,
they tried to pass it out at the back, and Casemiro balloons it up in the air. Amrabat can't control and gets dispossessed.
And they went back.
Did you want to play like that all game?
Yeah, because they're losing the game 2-1, and then they go back to what they do, like just naturally. That's a training ground thing. Amrabat gets the ball, and Amrabat, just because he's come on as a sub, goes, right, I'm going to play and run out and play out with the ball. And that's all right most weeks. But when you're at Man City, they will nick it off you because they're one of the best counter-pressing teams in the world. And then you're dead because the ball goes to Haaland and it goes in the net. So it doesn't matter who you've got in goal. It doesn't really matter. So these things all matter and all these details matter. And this is what United will need to work on now between now and next season, is because I would say this, Scott, and this is a criticism of Eric Ten Hag. After 2 years, I would have liked to have seen some of this more ironed out, even with these players. because they're basics. And I think today you did the basics really well, but only to an extent. And then you kind of shot yourself in the foot. And that was the end of the football match.
Yeah, I mean, Ten Hag came in with a game plan. I think some players executed it well. I know Cotton's still in the comments.
Yeah.
I think they defended well for a large part of the game. I really do. And I thought Rafa Varane in particular was really good.
Yeah,
I thought Onana was quite good.
Yeah.
But they got one down. And unfortunately, not many teams in the world can stop Man City creating as many chances as they created. Obviously, you need to give a little bit more in the opposition half, but we've already explained why United didn't really get that much ball up front. It's because they don't really have any players. Marcus Rashford in particular is the one I was talking about there, but Garnacho as well, not really able to deal with the swarm of a press around him. He can't really pick that correct pass. He's 19 years old. You know, what are we expecting?
And Ole's version of United were much better at the proper counter attack. So when there was space in behind, that team in a 4-2-3-1 was built to be able to just exploit space in behind. And when you think about Man United now, they play more of a counter pressing style. So they try and shift up as a unit. They didn't do that today, obviously, but that's kind of what Ten Hag wants to do in terms of the methodology. And that's the difference, is that, again, today I thought the space was in behind. And they didn't recognize it 2 or 3 or 4 times when the ball was easily there to be clipped into a channel. And then Garnacho would have had a straight line run. And it didn't happen enough. Happened for Rashford.
Was that? I think I remember I remember that incident. Who was
and
it?
There was one with Anthony towards the end there, where Anthony gets the ball on the right wing. And really, the ball is so easy. It's super easy. He doesn't even have to do anything. He just has to slide it forward into the centre forward position, and there's runners, and he kind of checked. And the reason why he checked, Scott, is because that's what United do normally in games. So United would check there to try and retain possession, or to maybe overload on the right hand side. So annoying, but I think also is that, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and all of these things. You can still see there are so many fragmented issues in the squad that you were never going to get over in one game today. You weren't going to turn up at Man City and it was all going to be perfect. You know, the problem is that all the games you've lost this season, and I think we counted 16 now, I think in all competitions.
There's 11 in the league now.
So this is 17 now. I think this is number 17 in all competitions, including Europe and obviously the cup competitions. You lost 17 games this year, and there are reasons. There are real reasons for it, partly injuries, but I think it's also the development of the squad isn't quite there at the moment. You look at some of these guys, Scott, like you can't see a lot of them surviving, being honest. Like, I'm trying to be calm and level-headed here, but if you want to go on to the next level, you're really going to have to buy some players going into the new season next year. And if you've got a new manager, I don't think any other manager does this better with this lot. Do you get what I'm saying? Is that I don't think Graham Potter walks in tomorrow and goes, yeah, I can just magic all this up. But the truth is, Scott, whoever is the manager next year is going to have to do better with a lot of these players. You can't sell all of them. And I do think some of them can be developed further than they have been.
Easy Ollie says, you United fans' standards have dropped terribly. Geez, if you think that was acceptable today, then you do you. You were embarrassing. Your players can't pass to each other because they're poorly coached. I mean, I'm not if you want me to think that this team's going to win the league, because that's what United should be doing, they should be competing for the league, you will call me deluded. You really will, because it's not good enough.
Is that a non-United fan who's written that?
I do think so.
Right. So I want to address that person, because do you know what? Yeah, our standards have dropped. I'm telling you this. Like, for 10 years, our team has been trash. Yeah, as much as we've wanted it to work, and we've had some great players come to the football club, your Di Marias and your Ibrahimoviches and your Schweinsteigers and all of this, none of it has worked. I think we said on our show a couple of weeks ago that something like 90% of our signings have failed in a 10-year period. So yeah, our levels are like here, but it's not 10 years ago. It's not. Do you remember when we beat City there with Robin van Persie's free kick? Yeah, and that went in. That was a different universe. Like, we could expect a different performance then now. If you expect something more from this Man United squad at Man City, the best team on the planet, no, you have to find a game plan. And the game plan is to try and at least get something, get a point. If you get a win, that's miraculous. Like, how many teams win at the Etihad? But United could have got a point today, Scott. I think they had the game plan to actually get the point. It's just that they ran out of gas. And I think you said the one person there asked about substitutions, is that what can you do? Like, I think Jurgen Klopp said this about his team playing these youngsters that he's been playing. He's like, you've still got to play players because people are knackered. Like, you have to, Rashford's blowing. You're going to have to bring him off, aren't you? There's no point leaving him on because then he'll be out of position and then someone will score. So I don't really think the manager could have done a lot more with the substitutions today. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I saw criticism of him when he took Kobbie Mainoo off.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but the kid's 18. Like, you have to look at the options available to him today. I'm not going to sit there and say that, Ten Hag did everything right today. I think with what he had, he did the best that he could really have done. And I think there were some players on the pitch that maybe didn't execute the plan properly. But last week's game against Fulham was the game to take aim. Not this one. Like, this is. I thought United would ship 5 or 6 today. I actually did, and I felt the same at Anfield as well. And I think most people did. So
I thought we'd get hurt today.
Yeah, I really did. And
I wasn't looking forward to this show.
Yeah, and standards have actually dropped. The long-term standards are obviously always for United to be competing for titles, but United haven't competed for a title in 10, 11 years. So you have to be realistic with where the team is. And that's why a lot of United fans have been campaigning to get somebody in at the top of the club who's going to install people who know what the hell they're doing above it. And that's going to take 2-3 years, possibly longer. Probably longer.
Dan Ashworth being in the job for 10 minutes, and we'll talk about now the future weeks and months, is not going to change anything immediately. But at least you've now got something you can plan towards. You can have a goal. And then, do you know what, Scott? Your standards can creep up a little bit more. You can say, well, do you know what? This year we came whatever we ended up with, like where we come in the league this season. And you could say, but that's not a fair reflection of our ambitions for next year. Next year, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to buy 200 million of players, but we're also going to sell 100. We're going to balance the books and we're going to do it like a proper football project. And I think United are treading water, Scott. Like, I see that in this squad, is that you have placeholders in certain positions, and like, I think you've got kids playing too many minutes. So I think Garnacho and Manu are the two I would highlight. I think they need a rest, but you haven't really got a choice because, like, I think Kobbie got pulled today because to me, he did look like he was overrunning that midfield. It was once or twice where, normally in games where he just looks like a Rolls Royce. He's so smooth, isn't he, on the ball? And he was getting rushed because Bernardo Silva was like, "No."
There was a few moments today where I think the City press maybe thought, "Oh God, this is a little bit different."
Yeah, I think he was like,
even in the first 5 minutes. I think there was a moment in the first 5 minutes where he got pressed on the touchline just outside the box.
He was like, "I've not seen this before. This feels fresh." Oh no, and he did okay. Like, he didn't really frivolously again give the ball away, but it was harder work for him. So I'm not surprised that the manager pulled him. And I think also with the sports science reports is that there's no doubt these younger kids they'll be looking at them and saying, right, we don't want to burn them out. We've still got seasons to play here. We've got 15 odd games, and we're still in an FA Cup, and we've got Liverpool coming, and we still want to kind of end top 5 if we can, if that gets you in the Champions League. You've got to still manage people sympathetically. When you lose a when you lose a Højlund, I keep saying Haaland because we've seen him today. But when you lose a Højlund, you see how profoundly that's affected Man United's front line. But it's real profound. You can't really do the stuff that was working 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. So you change those things, but you still got to find method. You still got to find a way to actually still win games and control games. And that's what I think this team is so bad at, Scott, overall, is just in-game management. And I think today your in-game management was better. Like, I'm not trying to defend poor performances or losing 3-1 at Man City, but you were better today at your game management than you were against Fulham. The other day with Fulham, it was wild. I was there watching it, and I'm like school kids running around. They don't have control of the game. Today, I thought you sat in, you did the work, but you just played such a far superior football team, and you lost the game because of that.
I do want to talk about Erik ten Hag in general shortly, but I did want to talk about Onana, actually. Because I thought he was quite good today.
Pretty cool head today, I thought.
Yeah, quite good. His distribution was quite good. One of his kicks led to the goal. Made some pretty good saves. I mean, there was a Rodri kind of skimmed effort, which he palmed away. What do you think of the second goal? The second City goal, I think it was the Foden one where he ran off Casemiro? Yeah, it was the second goal, wasn't it? Where he had a hand to it, maybe got down a bit too late.
I think because of his overall performance being relatively good, then for this time I'll let him have it, but not a strong wrist. If he has a strong wrist, it doesn't go in. Just doesn't. He gets the fingertips and it goes wide. But I'm not going to criticize him for today, Scott, because he wasn't really a problem. And we've seen so many games this year where he has been a problem. Again, let's do some tactico bits. You know, he's faced the worst XG in the league this year for expected goals from opponents right near the bottom. United are a relegation team or close to it when you go through all of those metrics, and he's then had such a high percentage save rate off the back of that. And yeah, some of those are at him, he saves it right in front of him or whatever, but you still got to save it, haven't you? And I actually think 2 or 3 times today, Scott, I was really pleased how he saved the ball with his legs. I've been saying that again for weeks. Do a little bit of De Gea. Yeah, sometimes if it's right in front of you, kick it away. You don't have to smother the ball. Kick it away and you're fine. I actually think that was one of David De Gea's massive strengths, is that he always kind of knew when to go down and when not, in general. I think the thing is for Andre Onana, maybe his Man United career will be cut short at some point. We don't know if the manager's gone next year or not. I think with Andre Onana, it's probably fair on him to have a decent regular back four in front of him. Like I said, 21 changes in 27. I don't think helps a goalkeeper be settled, especially a new one. So I think he did all right today, Scott. Distribution was fine. I think towards the end of the game, he made 1 or 2 silly passes. But overall, I don't think he was worse than Ederson today. Do you know what I mean? Do you know, we haven't mentioned that. Ederson slide through Garnacho.
I was actually going to come to this because there was 2 incidents, obviously.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the foul before, or the foul on Rashford before.
The Rashford foul, yeah.
The Foden goal, which Rob and I both agree was not a foul. I think it was, maybe sometimes you get him. Sometimes you might get him. But for me, Marcus Rashford has to be stronger.
Yeah. If he grabs his shirt, then I'd say foul. But he didn't. It was just hand on shoulder.
Yeah. It's a coming together. That's what happens. But the Ederson clear out of Garnacho. Your thoughts on that? Because I thought it was fine. Again, I've got no complaints today for decisions or anything like that. And maybe some people do, maybe you do, but for me, it was a clean tackle. Maybe the argument is that if it's another area of the pitch, it's a little bit excessive force. But I don't think you should be taking those tackles out of football. It was clean. It was a clean tackle, got the ball.
I get that. And I think when you said the rule book, you just answered kind of my point I'm about to make, is that if you slide through a play like that at that force with that, it's say in the middle of the pitch, say in the centre circle, do you know what? It's a foul and a yellow card. So I think the irony of this is that goalkeepers get given this kind of carte blanche to challenge forwards, and there's no real problem with that. But the only thing you have to answer in that moment is not whether do we want tackles or not. We have to say, is that goalkeeper in control of his faculties as he goes for the ball? And the absolute truth is, the answer is no. He gets the ball. Of course he does. He gets there first, but he wipes the player out massively. Why is it only goalkeepers can do that? Because a fullback can't do that. A central midfielder can't do that. A centre forward's not allowed to do that. So there's nothing in the rule book that actually says goalkeepers are allowed to do that and no one else is. So I think the thing is that if that had been given, what we're seeing now with VAR is that VAR is not going to give those. Because the referee is going to say we want contact. It's a 50-50. The truth is that if he catches Garnacho wrongly, that's a broken ankle. That's the reason why you have that rule. You have that rule about sliding through an excessive force. And I think it was borderline. I don't think it was the worst thing I've ever seen a goalkeeper do. I remember Schumacher all those years ago jumping up and sticking his knee in someone's chest and jaw and breaking their neck. It's happened before. But I do think there was excessive force. And I think then you have to look at it slightly differently. And goalkeepers, I think, are massively protected, Scott, in those moments. I'm not a fan of that. I think goalkeepers get away with murder.
Just had to ban someone from the comment section. Is doing my
head. No. What are they saying, Scott?
Just he had a timeout and then he came back and then
Was he struggling?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like a United fan. Anyway, this is a United podcast, and you should subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts. The Promise and a Manchester United podcast are on Spotify and Apple on audio. This audio show will be uploaded after this YouTube live show.
Yeah. Let's have some comments. What comments? Let's have some comments.
Yeah, there's been a lot of comments coming in, and maybe we'll get to them in the second. We'll also talk about Ericson Haag. Get them in, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment for us, hit the notification bell, follow us on social. The social media channels for Rob and I are in the description of the show at @_ Scott Saunders and @ @Rob_B. Right, moving on. Let's see. I wanted to talk about this one, not Rag saying, get a proper DM that can screen and defenders with pace that can push up, and we might see the best of Onana next year. I think you're right.
That's
I think you're right. United's profiling. Everybody will sit there and say Casemiro was a panic signing, and he was a panic signing.
He was.
They just lost at Brentford. They lost at Brighton, and they thought, "Oh God, we need somebody."
It's the ultimate panic signing.
the panic button is pressed. You give Casemiro a hell of a lot of money and put him in a league where the intensity is higher than it's ever been before in a player that's just turning 30.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's been good for a while. I thought he was actually okay today, to be honest, but that was because United condensed the space around him. But ultimately, if you're looking to play the type of football that every single person expects United to play, like they expect it to be, like Liverpool and City, because they've spent loads of money, he's probably not the right player to do that with.
No, I would say, I think when you look at the Foden second goal, and this is the only criticism I have of both Casemiro and Varane today, I thought they played okay. I think they did their jobs. They were good within the position. Is that you see that space when a player is in that channel doesn't condense quick enough. So you've got a defensive midfielder that's not quick enough. You've got centre back that's not quick enough. They cannot kind of address quick enough. And guess what? You get a clean shot and you score. If you have a centre back that can actually do that and go to that, probably Foden doesn't get that shot off, or not cleanly anyway. There's someone there. Casemiro, like, what are you going to do? You've got him, you've got to use him, yeah. And it does mean that in games, if you play 4-1-4-1, Scott, which is what this manager wants to do every single week, you are going to get hurt at times. So I would implore Eric Ten Hag, don't play 4-1-4-1 every week. Use it when you can. Like you said, I thought Casemiro did well because his body's around him, and that helped him play his game. Just think about Real Madrid, Scott. When he was at Real Madrid, he never was left on an island at Real Madrid. He was always the kind of water carrier. One ball, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards.
That midfield three, was as good as it was so tight.
Yeah.
They didn't short distances to pass the ball away, and they were all really good at keeping the ball.
Yeah. And we know Kobe's good at that, but we all know that Bruno's not. And I think this is the problem, is that you've got Christian Eriksen. Christian Eriksen doesn't look like he'll ever play for Man United again, but he's probably still technically your best midfielder. And you've got Scott McTominay, which I think you saw today once or twice. He had the ball at his feet, and he looks like a wild giraffe running through the Serengeti with the ball at his feet. And he's just a little bit all over the place and clunky, and you lose the ball. So there's no doubt that comment is spot on. Is that I think if you get yourself a proper defensive midfielder and being truthful, probably 2 centre backs, then Andre Onana might have options to pass out from the back. And we might be saying in a year's time, this goalkeeper settled now. He saves the ball with his feet now and then, but making better decisions. And he's actually a proper sweeper keeper. So the benefits might still come for Onana.
Kingy says, interesting that Pep acknowledged United's injury crisis in his post-match analysis. We've not actually seen it. We started recording before either of the managers started speaking. So Eric not being given fair credit for the scale of their injuries. Unfortunately, no, I agree with you, Kingy. But unfortunately, we live in a world where that doesn't matter. Because, United have spent £1 billion. In some people's eyes, they think that he should be able to play the style of football that he wants to play, that City and Liverpool are playing, because United have spent loads of money erroneously in a lot of cases. And instead, he's able to do it with, the players that he had to use today. Like, Johnny Evans at 36, man. Like, hey, he was good. I thought he was quite good today. Maybe a couple of passes were a little bit erratic and he lost the ball cheaply a couple of times. But in general, in terms of how he defended, like, I thought he did quite well. But they're still using Johnny Evans. They use Victor Lindelof at left back. They've got a midfield, yeah, fine. But they've only got one striker in their entire squad and he's injured. And we just talked about how United can't hold the ball up. So, yeah, I think the injuries really impact it. I think Lisandro Martinez, as we said on previous podcasts, is the only football player at centre-back in that team that can pass the ball out from centre-back and progress the ball properly. So a lot of what Eric Ten Hag has been trying to do this season has been hampered by injuries. The causes of those injuries, who knows? But United have been getting injuries for a long time and they need to look at that. But they're not the only club to suffer a lot of injuries. There's a lot of football being played this season, and it just seems like it never ends. But I feel some sympathy for him in that sense. But of course, the argument's there as well that he's got to be doing better with what he's got. So, I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, look, I have complete sympathies with the injuries. You can't not have sympathy. I think that the bit that I would throw back at Eric is that you need to have different systems to protect. You have to. If you just want to do 4-1-4-1 every week because that's what you would optimally do with your best team, then I guess what? If you haven't got your best team and you've got your scratch team out there, you might lose football matches. And it's not rocket science. And I think the things of Eric, today he's shown that he's got other systems. He can do other stuff. I would have really liked Scott to see United have done this several times this season, playing a 4-3-3 with Bruno in a much more of a free role at the top end to kind of do a press and to play a false role. And I think United could have actually staged this in pre-season. I think they could have done it in pre-season, had this system up their arm. And then when you play better teams, you're not then getting thrashed because let's be honest, United have played these top 10 teams now over a whole year, isn't it? And they've been pretty much beaten every game. Every match you've lost kind of tells you've got to change something. You can't just do what you really want to do if you haven't got the right players. So just change it and don't feel that you mentioned Guardiola and we've talked about tactical snobbery. Don't feel that pressure. Your job is to make sure you don't lose games, firstly, and then your second job is to go and win them. But if you lose games because you just want to carry on doing the same thing, I'm not down with that either. And I think that's where Eric has failed in the last 6 months, is that he's not found systems to kind of suit what he actually has, which, being honest, is not a lot. He hasn't got a lot of talent at his disposal compared to when you've got everyone fit. Today, you haven't got Højlund. You're going to have a system without a number 9. So what do? You play a false 9. Guess what? It worked to an extent. So do that more. And I'd like to see Erik ten Hag kind of push that envelope a little bit further if he stays on at Manchester United.
We'll do a proper section on Ten Hag just shortly. Nick says, does anyone know when Mount will be back or any of the others? Wan-Bissaka. I think Wan-Bissaka was a couple of weeks, maybe after the international break. Mason Mount's just posted a picture on Instagram of him training or back running the other day.
Well, Mason Mount's been one of the disasters of the season. Like, he really has. He's given nothing because he's been injured. And he's had the same season he had last year at Chelsea, Scott. And that is that he was injured and didn't feature. And that's why Chelsea went, off you go. I definitely advocated Mason Mount as a player when he came to United. But you spend 60 million on him. Now, being honest, that could be 3 players. You could have got 3 really good players, young players that you brought in your team across the pitch, and they might have all had significant minutes this year. So it's a wait and see with Mason Mount, but I don't feel good about it. I think these repeated injuries that he keeps having is a worry. Wan-Bissaka should be back within the next week or two, and I think he will definitely get minutes. I think when you look at today, Kambwala coming on and playing at fullback. What did you think of Victor Lindelof at left back today, Scott?
It's so painful.
What a question, Rob.
So painful for me to watch that. But there was one moment where I think he was tracking, was it Foden?
Yeah.
After a ball over the top. And I thought, oh, he's not as slow as Amrabat is. But any blame on Lindelof for Foden's first goal? Because obviously he kind of lets him get the shot away. It was a great strike, to be fair.
No, because you need a left back, and if you decide, like, I did think that he might have gone with Amrabat at left back today, but the point was that because you're not inverting, you're then looking for a defender at left back. So that's why he went with Lindelof. So he didn't, obviously wasn't inverting inwards. You're trying to stop that channel from Foden exposing it. And let's be honest, Phil Foden, probably in the best moment of his career now in the last 6 to 12 months. Just, he's so hot. He's scoring goals. His expected goals are just through the roof. But I think there in that moment, you did see once or twice where the ball came to him, where United were working it down the left, and he just kind of swung his boot at it to kind of swing the ball into the middle of the pitch, and you were like, "Don't do that. Just stop. Just put your foot on the ball and either give it back to Onana or just make a short, simple pass." So
I think that's a couple of times. Yeah,
his pace is a problem, but I also think his decision making overall, he makes those kind of weird decisions in games. I come away so often kind of criticizing him for those things. He kind of did that today, but I don't think he cost Man United with any of his performances, but I would not be having him at left back. I would prefer Amrabat at left back if we're going forward like that. I know Amrabat had a bad moment at the end of the game, but I think he can invert on the left hand side, and he showed in the last football match that he can help you do that and do it successfully.
There was a comment from Nayar. Why can Klopp get results with kids? Jurgen Klopp's been at Liverpool since 2016.
His kids are better.
Was
kids are better in them already. Yeah, look, I'm a big advocate of kids, and again, we've done that show before where we say play the kids, play the kids, play the kids. But I do think like today, you pay Cambuala, he's a kid. You pay Forson, he's a kid. You pay Manu, you play Garnacho. You've got 4 kids out there. You can't really play any more than that. You could bring others in, but you really wouldn't want to. And I think the thing is with Klopp is that Klopp's system means that he's more interested in what the player does in the system rather than the age or any of that. He's more profile manager. And I think Erik ten Hag wants to be that kind of coach. I think that's why you saw Forson come on today. Let's be honest. It's all about if your kids are good enough. I think that's really important. And United have got some good young players, but for this level, this maybe isn't the game that you'd want to do it in. And Woods Liverpool play Bradley in certain games. You'd either go from fullback into midfield, and there's upside to some of their players. But I don't think United have got the depth of that stock like ready just to roll out in a game like this today in a derby.
Yeah, we'll see how Liverpool's kids do unless all of their players are magically recovered for next week's game against City. I mean, do you think Liverpool's kids would go get in a result against City? No. It was a miracle they did it against Chelsea, and that's because Chelsea were awful in that extra time period. Anyway, there's a comment I wanted to get. Yeah, there's a comment I wanted to get to from Vincent. If you're still here, mate, just drop another comment back to us because I'm curious for your opinion. I'm guessing you're an Ajax fan. The type of players Ten Hag works with now is opposite of what he worked with at Ajax, but fire him and bring him back to us, please.
There you go.
Now, that's interesting to see an Ajax fan say that. A presumably Ajax fan, given he's used the term us there. So if you can get back to us with what you think of Erik ten Hag, I'd be quite interested to know.
I agree with the comment, though. I agree with the comment stylistically, because I think this is it. Is that Ajax, the idea is to ball retention, keep the ball, play through the midfield.
They also teach that from when they're 7 years old,
like from the academy, from the academy. But also, it's more, Scott, that you buy players for that profile. So that's why your squad can do what you want it to do. And I think the things with Man United is that it's been roughshod. So you've bought players who just do loads of different stuff and doesn't really gel together. Ironically, Martinez isn't there, former Ajax player. Anthony is there, former Ajax player. Like, we have got a few players there. Donny van der Beek, long gone Ajax player, and a very successful one in the period that he was there. So I think it's a perfect circle. But I think Erik ten Hag would want to play more possession football, but he's got to find answers, and that's really, I think, where I am with a lot of it, with the development of the squad and the style of play.
A lot of the players, like I've said this before, a lot of the players that are still there, and I'm looking at the lineup now, a big chunk of them were playing counter-attack football under Ollie.
Yeah.
And
that's all they were doing.
And that's all they were doing.
Yeah.
So asking them to be able to, take the ball under pressure and sustain a press and play out of a press and dominate territory and this kind of thing, you're not really getting it with these players.
No. I mentioned Bruno and McTominay at the top of the show, and I talked about their position, how I liked kind of the 4-3-3 and how they kind of dovetailed together at the top end to look after the centre backs. There's 2 ways of looking at that, Scott. One, that system kind of helps them and suits them. But the second side of it is that the reason why I want them there is because I don't want them there, and I'm pointing behind me. I don't want them in the midfield receiving the ball to feet, because they've proved 1,000 times over that they can't play that style of football, so don't do it. And I think we still carry on with that. Bruno gets the ball in the edge of our box, and we're expecting him to be a ball-playing midfielder. Scott McTominay gets the ball to feet in the middle of the pitch, and we're like, make the right pass, Scotty. They're both better closer to the opposition goal with another 8-9 men behind them. So that's a problem, isn't it, for the manager? Because you have to, again, find solutions. But I don't want these players there, Scott. They're not good enough to do that role. At Ajax, it's a holistic system. They all play the same way from when they're 10 years old upwards. And every player they buy in is all about technique. And let's be honest, this Man United team, it really lacks technique. There's just not enough technical players to play a style of football that I think is competitive with a team like Man City.
Right, let's talk about Eric then, because let's look at the big picture here. I will tell you what it is now. Man United are 6th in the Premier League. They have played 1 game more than Tottenham, and they're 6 points back. Top 5 potentially gets Champions League. Aston Villa, United won at Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago. And then obviously Villa won their other 2 games. United have lost theirs. So that gap that we were fearful could have been created at that time has now been created because United won the game with Villa directly and then failed to follow it up. But just the basis of that, Rob, United are in position for 6th at the moment. I think we all expected or hoped for United to get Champions League this season and for football to be played more along the lines of what we were expecting from Ten Hag's Ajax team, etc., etc. So where do we stand with Eric at the moment? Because like we said earlier in the show, I don't think today is the day to look at Ten Hag's style of play and think, you ain't got it, mate. I think there's a lot of circumstances with the injuries that he's got and the fact that City are just so much better than United at the moment. Like I'm seeing people say charges, etc. And obviously there's other circumstances, yes. But the fact of the matter is City on the surface have made so many good decisions through the entire football club over the past decade that the reason why they are where they are is because, and Pep said this the other day as well, it's not just me. It wasn't just me who did all this. And yeah, he's right. But yet people still think that the Man United manager should come in and fix it all. So what do you think? What's your take at the moment? There's 12 games left, plus the FA Cup. What does he need to do, Rob, in your eyes?
Do you know what? I think today, had he gone to Man City, done his normal 4-1-4-1 pantomime, which we've seen every week forever, and you lost this game 5-0, then my kind of comments would have had a different tone to them. And I'll be honest, Scott, kind of thought that's what it would be. I thought we would lose today, and I thought he would play his systems and the systems he's been playing. And to see the lineup and kind of go, oh, this might be 4-3-3. This might well be a false 9. We might be seeing something a little bit different. I was happy with that. And I was thinking, I hope we don't get stuffed, because if we get stuffed playing 4-3-3, it's a bit like Ole. Ole used to play 4-3-3. We'd lose 5-0 and he'd never play it again. And that was a problem. He didn't like it. And I understand why. I think with Eric is that I'm going to frame this in a way that I have previously, is that if you are Ineos and you are Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I'm sure they've had some really positive, constructive talks with the manager. And I think they've probably told the manager that your time as technical director is over and your time as coach is now. And we want you to coach these players and get results. And they will keep it very, very basic. Dan Ashworth will come in and Dan Ashworth will run the rule. Even if he's on gardening leave, he'll look at it, he'll make choices. Is Eric Ten Hag safe? Well, no, because as I said, this year, even with all the injuries, and they have been horrific for him, I'm not entirely convinced that every week he's squeezed the life out of the squad. I talked about Jurgen Klopp a minute ago. Jurgen Klopp goes, wins a trophy with kids. And that's the miracle of management, is that you make that choice. And if you win, people pat you on the back and go, you're amazing. But if you make other choices and you don't win, you will be criticized. So I think with Eric is that he's had a limited palette to work with this year, but he hasn't really put anything on the canvas that makes me think, oh, that's beautiful. That's a step forward. Well done, manager. I like Eric Ten Hag. I always have. I wanted him at the football club from Ajax. I still believe in him, but I'm also not a fool. And that is that if you don't do the technical, tactical stuff and get your team right and playing the right way week after week and have systems, the director of football will come in, the technical director, and they will look at you, he will blame you, and you will get paid up and you'll be off back to Holland. And that will be it. That will be the over, and you'll have a new coach. You'll have Graham Potter, you'll have De Zerbi, you'll have someone else. It will just be a new thing again. They won't have the same issues that Erik ten Hag has had. They will have more support. They'll probably have a proper strategy in terms of transfers because the football club is changing on that. So with Eric, I have sympathies with him, Scott, but at the same time, I've been at all the games, and there's been a lot of games where I thought United could have just been more sound in their technique and the tactics, and they just haven't been. But today wasn't that day. Today, I thought United did what they had to do to try and get a result. Some big games coming up now, Scott. Rest of the end of the season, if you get top 5, you might be able to say the season's just been a success because you got Champions League just. I think we'll also remember a lot of these horrible performances. We'll remember, Scott, that what are we in now? 3rd of March, Manchester United have a goal difference of a big fat 0. That tells me enough.
It's -2, Rob.
It was -2 because we lost today, of course. So we're -2. And that really means that you're about the 12th, 13th, 14th best team in the league. Being honest, in terms of goal difference, I think we're the only team with a negative in the top 10. I think it might be one other. I think Brighton, not particularly high. I think they're +3 or something this year. So that's where you are. And it's an honest take on your team. And you have to decide whether you want this guy to go forward next season with the same players, because you'll have to sell some, but you'll also have to buy some. And you're going to have a philosophy, I think, of how you want to play. And Eric's philosophy hasn't come off in 2 years. Being completely honest, I think he's done all right. He won a trophy last year. He got Champions League. But look at the way you were in the Champions League this year, Scott. You were in every one of those games and you couldn't manage it. You were in every one, and you think you led 4 of those 6 Champions League games. You got knocked out. So that's a stain. You could say that there was an injury or this didn't work or that didn't work. You still got to manage the game. And I'm not quite sure he's done that consistently this year.
As far back as the post-Solskjaer, Ralph Rangnick era, I thought that these players are not fit to play the type of football that everybody wants them to play.
Yeah.
Ralph Rangnick himself said it. He said, open heart surgery. That's still not happened, everyone. That's still not happened. I know they shipped out a few players, but the players they need to ship out ain't gone yet. And you can look at Nayar says Rob ten Hag signings have been shocking too. Anthony Mount. Yeah, probably.
Not been great. Yeah.
No, they've not been great. I don't disagree with that. They shouldn't have overpaid for Anthony, but I don't think Erik ten Hag was sat there saying, or in the negotiation room saying, I'm going to pay 86 million for Anthony.
Yeah, it's Richard Arnold's fault. This is why I keep saying it's Richard Arnold's fault.
Yeah. And any sane football club would not make that decision. So it's maybe any manager will want the players that they want, right?
Yeah.
But there should be a committee decision, and sometimes the manager should be, or a plan.
Have a plan.
Sometimes the club should say, nah, we're going to get this guy instead because he's cheaper and he maybe fits the style of play we want to play a little bit more. Yeah. Take Mohamed Salah versus Julian Brandt at Liverpool.
Perfect example.
Perfect example. Klopp didn't want Mo Salah. He wanted Julian Brandt. No. Liverpool signed Mo Salah because Michael Edwards was part of that party that said, hey, we should get Mo Salah instead. They paid it, and he's been one of the best players in the Premier League for years.
Doku today. Doku's played.
I don't think he's very good.
Well, he played, Scott, though, and I think he's actually had at the start of the season, he was better than he is at the moment. But again, it's just an example of your squad building. You have to go into the market. There's no way that Pep Guardiola was going, Trixie Bergerstein, there's this lad, Julian Alvarez, I saw last year, go buy him for 40 million. That wasn't him. That's City that go and do that. It's the club. So this is what we need more of at our football club, is to have a coach that doesn't have to think about this stuff. And I do think as well, Scott, that maybe Eric has been overloaded by that in terms of the pressure, is that if you haven't got time just to work on systems and work on training, then things do get muddled. And I think we've seen that at Man United for 10 years, is that some very good coaches have put out some really poorly tactical, executing teams who haven't been able to do it. And I think that's why Ole kept it simple and played 4-2-3-1 and tried to play that way every week. I think Eric, you've seen this year, he's a tactical coach, but he's not showing it because he hasn't got the parts to be able to do it. But unfortunately, no one cares about that at the end of the day. It's about winning and losing, about an acceptable level, even when you've got injuries. So I think that's the story of Erik ten Hag for me, is that I'm sure he'd go somewhere else if he wasn't at Man United and be successful. I don't
watch him go to Borussia Dortmund in the summer and play really nice
he's
football.
Not a bad coach.
And not win anything.
this is the problem. Whenever you have a coach that fails, is that quite often it's just because results have gone south for whatever reason, and we blame them, and they do have to harbour some of the blame. But I don't think today Eric Ten Hag, in his first season at Old Trafford, he beats Pep Guardiola, the greatest coach of all time, the team that last year won the treble. Do you know what I mean? So there are ways, and I think tactically today he did get it right, and that's why I'm not trying to defend those tactics. I'm saying those tactics were the correct ones. Do I want to see it every week? No, of course not. But there are times where you have to change it, and that's what I worry about, is that he hasn't embedded that into the team, like different systems and different ways of playing. But I agree with you. Like most of our players, being honest, they're rubbish. A lot of them are garbage, and they wouldn't be in any other top 5, top 6 team. Just that you're stuck with a lot of them. Talk about Lindelof. Lindelof be in any of the top 6 teams? No, Johnny Evans wouldn't probably be in a starting team in the Premier League. But he's in our team because that's all you got. Just the truth, and that's something I think that Ineos will be truthful about, Scott. I think they'll look in the mirror and they'll say, "Okay, we don't want to stick with Eric Ten Hag when we'll bring in a new coach, but we're also going to bring in new players for that coach, and we're going to kind of do it the right way."
Red Devil TV says this manager wasted the good part of 400 million, ignoring the point that we're making over and over again.
Yeah,
the manager should not be signing the players.
I understand why people feel that, because I think people want everything to be binary and not multicolored. Not multifaceted. And the thing is with football is the most multifaceted sport you could get, because there's so many things that contribute towards winning, but also so many things that contribute towards losing. And I think Man United have just been playing with that balance forever, and that's why we're a bad football team. Let's be honest, we're not a good football team. We've not been a good football club, and that's why you suffer what happens today. Like, you shouldn't be going there thinking about your XG. You've got to just try and get results somehow, and got to do something. And in the future, you might be able to go and say, right, we want an XG of 1.6 every game on average now, because we want to be able to go and win football matches. Well, I don't know. I don't think Man United are anywhere near any of that yet. I think next year you might get closer. Certainly at the moment, you're a fragmented entity, and you're not really worthy of that. Look at that badge I'm holding there. It's not really a Man United squad, is it? It's a squad full of players that just so happen to get paid by Man United. And I think quite a few of them, Scott, won't be there next season.
Yeah, Ten Hag has to, he's got 12 games left in the Premier League. Maybe he gets some more. I think he will. He's got the FA Cup as well, Liverpool in the FA Cup, and obviously he's got some big games coming. He's got Liverpool to come at Old Trafford twice. He's got Arsenal to come at Old Trafford, second last game of the season. They've got trips to Brentford and Chelsea coming up after the international break. There's some big matches to come, and, he's got to start getting results, really. I think United have to get in the top 5, but maybe all the circumstances outside of what you see on the pitch, maybe they do play some bearing. Ultimately, I think that he has to show more than he is showing currently for Ineos to think that he's the best person to stick with, and that's just the way it is. Football's about results at the end of the day, but we'll see. And like I've said a few times on this show, I don't think this is the day to get on Eric Ten Hag's back. This isn't the day, because if they'd have lost 6-1 playing open as they did at Fulham against Fulham last week, fine. But he tried to change it up today, and I think that for a large part of the game, I thought United were in it, even though they defended on the edge of their own box. And that's just what you have to do sometimes.
It's what you have to do. I think one of the comments here I was just seeing here is that, I'm hearing everything here that it's everyone's fault except Eric Ten Hag's. Not at all. I'm actually the other way. I think that he's been dealt a bad lot this season, but I do blame him for a lot of the stuff. Like, I think his job is to put teams out, train them, give them tactics, and give them instructions. And I think I said to you, Scott, a few weeks or months ago, that one of the things that worries me is that I don't always feel that Man United prepared. Like, going to watch games, and I'm like, this lot aren't prepared to play this team this week for whatever reason. And I think that's on Eric. And I think that's, again, where a technical director would look at that and kind of go, okay, that's on the manager. I think that's probably why he will pay for it with his job. I'm still leaning towards that, Scott. I know you've obviously said for Ten Hag to stay, and that's your opinion. I agree with that. But I also think that Ineos will look at it and they'll be ruthless, as they should be. Like, they'll be ruthless, and they'll go, we've got someone else that we like, and we're just going to go that route, because You know, we don't want to give this manager another year because we don't know him or we don't like him or we don't like the football. Today, I don't think Jim Radcliffe's watched today and gone, oh, I'm gutted with how the team played. I think they'll probably look at it as a positive that United almost dug out a result, because for a long time it was, 1-0 and 1-1. You could have got something out of this. In years gone by, Scott, you could have dug in even further at 1-1 and really got regressive. Just get everyone back and just hit everything long and do that. And they didn't. They just kind of went back to type for a little bit towards the end of the game. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't think today is the day to really judge anyone.
Right, we'll wrap it up there. That has been hopefully some catharsis for some people who are looking for non-over-the-top viral reactions. I'm sure you'll see plenty.
You need to cry, Scott. I want you to cry on camera.
Yeah, I need to do this.
Yeah,
bash my desk and shut down the camera lens.
So we'll get a clip of it. We'll get it on
this
Twitter.
This manager is the worst I've ever seen in my life.
Or do the opposite. Do the opposite. Say, I'm in love with Eric Ten Hag. You know I love him, and do it like that, and go down that route. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. It really it can feel low, can't it? Quite often at Man United, but yeah, I think you've got to feel good, haven't you, that you've got a new set of owners or a new sporting institution behind your football club. I think that's the big takeaway for me at the moment. That's what I'm holding on to.
Right, wrapping it up there. That is it from the Promised Land podcast today. We'll be back later this week. United play against Everton next on Saturday, the early kickoff, I believe.
Yeah, I don't like that game.
Yeah, you never do.
I don't like that game. That's the kind of game I'm more worried about. I was more worried about games like that than I am City, because United will go, oh, look, it's Everton. Well, we can play against Everton. What, just play 4-1 against this lot, and Everton will sit in, they'll defend, they hit you on a counter-attack, you lose. So I'm a little bit worried about that game.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and like this video as well, the YouTube live stream. We do these relatively frequently, but yeah, please join us, and thanks for watching the whole time that you have been, if you stuck with us as well. You can also catch this episode soon on audio on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Give that a 5-star review when it's up. Like this video, subscribe to the podcast on any of those platforms, leave a comment for us as well, and we'll do our very best to get through them at some point. And thanks for your comments and engagements on the live stream today as well. Hit the notification bell too so you never miss a show. And follow us on social at @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and at TPL MUFC. United have lost the Manchester derby. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do, but United have another few days off now to prepare for Everton. From Rob and from myself, Scott, thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, this has been the Promised Land podcast. See you soon.